Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video on the channel, guys. What I have for you guys today is another episode of the Championship Roundup. So this is now episode 20 of the Championship Roundup, guys, and we have some pretty big fixtures to talk over and some pretty shocking results here and there as well. There's a couple of upsets, so some fantastic goals scored this weekend as well. So what I want you guys to do is leave a comment in the comments down below as to how well your team played this weekend. I'd be very interested to know. And we've also had a manager departing, we've had some transfer sagas going on. So anything to do with your club, leave it in the comments down below. I'm always interested to know what you guys have to say. And as well as that, leave in the comments down below what you thought the result of the weekend was. And as well as that, the goal of the weekend. I'll be revealing what I thought mine were at the end of the video, but I'll be interested to know what you guys think of that one. And just before we get into any of the games, guys, I will put your comments on screen now. So if any of you did correctly manage to guess any of the scorelines taking place this weekend, I will include your comment on screen now. And in my opinion, it was a pretty tough one to actually get fixtures right with this one, because like I said before, there was quite a few upsets in this week's of fixtures, and like I said, it was a pretty hard one to call in my opinion. So fair play to everyone who did get one right, but enough of me rambling on, we'll just get into the fixtures. So the first game we had, guys, was the game taking place between Reading and Queen's Park Rangers, and in the end QPR managed to leave with a 1-0 victory, and it was Jamie Mackie who got on the score sheet for this one. Of course, him being a former Reading player is quite controversial. Obviously, he decided to celebrate in that one. He was only on loan at Reading, so I can sort of understand why he chose to do that. But in this game, I've got to give a lot of credit to QPR and Ian Holloway, especially, to be fair to them, because when, of course, Ian Holloway took over this side at QPR, they went on an awful run, and I think a lot of doubt was thrown his way and the team as well. But since then, they've gone on a really good run lately, so fair play to QPR. I think they do deserve quite a bit of credit for that, and they did in this game what they needed to do. You know, Reading had that, you know, quite typical play style now, which is to be expected of this Reading side, which is incredibly possession orientated. But in this game, it didn't really help them. Really, they couldn't craft out too many opportunities from that, and in the end, they managed to suffer from that with a 1-0 defeat to QPR. So once again, it's taken a bit of a kick out their promotion push for the end of the season, but QPR, a good victory for them. And then for our next game, guys, we had Leeds United who came up against Derby County. Now, going into this match, this one was always going to be a massive one at the top of the table. I mean, these are two sides which, come the end of the season, I am expecting both of them to be up there at the end of it. But Leeds United have come through with a 1-0 victory, and in the grand scheme of things, I think this could be a massive result for them. I mean, Derby, of course, being a fellow promotion chaser, to go ahead and pick up all 3 points at home was a massive statement of intent from Leeds United. And I've got to say that Derby in this game, they probably weren't aided by the red card. Obviously, it was Johnson who got the red card for Derby. After that happened, you know, they couldn't really find themselves back into the game. They couldn't settle it in with that one. But it's also been in the news recently that Leeds are trying to get Gary Monk to sign a new contract, and understandably so. I mean, he's the best manager Leeds have had in a long time. And once again, it was Chris Wood who came up on the score sheet for Leeds United. He has been an absolute gem for Leeds so far this season, and I've got to admit it, you know, being a Preston fan myself, I'd say that the best team I've seen play at Deepdale so far this season has been Leeds United. You know, I've seen Brighton, Newcastle, a lot of other of the top teams play at Deepdale this season, but the best team I've seen at Deepdale, it's been Leeds so far. And then for our next game, guys, we have Bristol City who came up against Cardiff, and this was one of the results of the weekend. I'm going to go ahead and say it now, with Cardiff getting a 3-2 victory in this local derby, and Bristol City's misery just continues to be piling on. You know, it did look at one point in this match that they looked to throw all that previous form behind them, and they've looked to turn a new leaf, but Cardiff managed to get back into this game, managed to grab the equaliser, and then eventually the winner from a Pilkington strike. It was a very good strike from that as well, but Bristol City's problems just keep piling up. I mean, I think there are quite a few positives to be taken from this with Bristol City. I thought that their debutants that were playing in this game, I've heard some pretty good things about that from some Bristol City fans, so let me know, Bristol City fans, what you thought of your new players down below. But once again, it's another victory, and I've seen a lot of frustration as well going towards Lee Johnson after the end of this one, so it'd be interesting to know, Bristol City fans, what you actually thought of Lee Johnson at the moment, and how much time does he have to turn this around. You know, are you going to stick with him till the end of the season no matter what? Because with the way things are heading, I mean, it's only, I think, 3 points off relegation for Bristol City at the moment. Who knows what could happen. And then for our next game, guys, we have Birmingham who came up against Nottingham Forest, and this one in the end managed to finish as a goalless draw, being a 0-0. And probably not, it wasn't the best game of the championship, but what actually was a standout from this was everything that went on after this match. So of course, the big news coming out of Nottingham Forest was that they have actually sacked their manager or head coach, whatever you want to call it, Philippe Montagnier. So I'd love to get some Nottingham Forest fans' opinions in the comments down below as to what you thought of this. I mean, it was probably inevitable, you know, to be completely honest. I mean, with the way things are going at Forest at the moment in time, they're only a couple of points off relegation, on an awful run of form as well. This whole season with Nottingham Forest has just been a complete mess, and to pile onto that, the takeover has just been a collapse in that as well. So everything that could be going wrong for Nottingham Forest at this point in time seems to be going wrong. I mean, Henry Lansbury wasn't involved with this game either, with obviously him being linked away to other teams as well. So literally, it looks like a real mess for Nottingham Forest at this point in time, and it's got to be said that with the way things are going and everything, it seemed to be being in a downward spiral. Relegation, it could happen come the end of the season for Nottingham Forest. But in terms of Birmingham, of course, they were poor in this match. I'm not going to deny that, you know. Ever since they've been under Zola, things haven't really been clicking with them like I know that they'll have wanted them to. But I'd love to get some Birmingham fans' opinions on what you make of the return of Craig Gardner. Of course, you signed him the other day, and let us know what you guys think of that return. I think it could be a pretty decent get. And then for our next game, guys, we have Brentford, who came up against Newcastle United, where Newcastle managed to claim a 2-1 victory. And in the grand scheme of things, this is a pretty big result for Newcastle, you know, because obviously lately in the Championship, they've seen a bit of a stutter, really, in their form. Obviously, they were pipped to top spot recently by Brighton, but with this result, that actually takes them back to the top of the Championship. And I saw a lot of happy Newcastle fans over the weekend, and understandably so. I mean, it was Dwight Gale once again who managed to pop up with a goal, a fantastic finish as well for that goal that he managed to net into the back of the net. But like I said, it was a much needed victory for Newcastle, which takes them back to the top of the table. But for Brentford, it's more frustration really in terms of that. I mean, Scott Hogan was actually on the bench for this match, with obviously a lot of speculation linking him away from Brentford. So I'd love to know, Brentford fans, what you would make of the team actually if Scott Hogan was to leave, and where you think you could, you know, go after Scott Hogan, because he has been such a pivotal player in Brentford's season so far this year. But I do think that Brentford, having Jota back in the team, I think that could prove to be massive actually for the rest of the season. He's definitely a talent, and I think with him back, with Hogan possibly leaving, that could soften the blow a little bit. And then for our next game, guys, we have Burton Albion, who came up against Wigan Athletic, and in the end, this one managed to finish with a 2-0 victory for Wigan. And this was a massive 3 points for Wigan. I mean, when these two came up against each other, 3 points for either of these sides would have been absolutely monumental. I mean, with the way things were looking recently for Wigan, I mean, relegation at one point, it seemed, was nailed on for Wigan, but since then they managed to sort of turn it around with this result, really, because this result against Burton gives them a bit of hope, because it's not just any victory, it's a victory against a team like Burton, who are fellow strugglers in the league at this point in time. And it's got to be said, a lot of question has been asked lately of Burton Albion's form lately. I mean, home form with Burton was the thing which was keeping them just above relegation, but even lately their home form seems to have deteriorated lately. So I'd love to know, from just a general Championship fan, do you think any of these sides will actually survive this season, or do you think both Burton and Wigan will face the drop this year? Let me know down below. And then for our next game, guys, we had Fulham, who came up against Barnsley. So in the end, this one managed to finish with a 2-0 victory to Fulham. Quite a comfortable victory for them in the end. And Chris Martin is back for Fulham, as he managed to net the penalty in this one. So let me know in comments down below, Fulham fans, what you think of the return of Chris Martin. Obviously, there was a bit of a situation with him wanting to go back to Derby and a bit of drama like that, but it does seem like he'll be with Fulham for the remainder of the season. And you know, if Fulham can get the best out of Chris Martin, you know, that playoff push which Fulham I think will be going for come the end of the season could be massive for them, because they've no doubt got a fantastic squad. They've got a great group of players, and if they are able to hold on to everyone in this January transfer window, there's a definite chance at the end of it where Fulham could make the playoffs. But the same, however, can't be said for Barnsley, who of course have lately lost their top scorer, Sam Winnall, and I think it probably was shown in this match, with them going forward looking a bit limp compared to how they have been recently. So Barnsley fans, are you a bit worried now, Barnsley fans, for the remainder of the season? I mean, so far I'd probably say that Barnsley have been one of the overachievers. I mean, they're about 10th in the table, and for a League One side to be 10th in the table at this point is absolutely massive. They've been exceptional so far, but obviously with Winnall leaving and Hurricane possibly leaving as well, do you think that could lead to Barnsley going on a bit of a downward spiral for the end of the season? Let me know down below. And then for our next game, guys, we had Ipswich Town, who came up against Blackburn Rovers, and what a win it was in the end for Ipswich. And I've got to say, the one time I'm backing Blackburn Rovers to get a victory and they go ahead and lose, so that made me look like a bit of a fool this weekend. But it was Tom Lawrence who came up with yet again more goals for Ipswich. And how good has Tom Lawrence been for Ipswich so far this season? I mean, I'm sure a lot of Ipswich fans, if you are watching this, let me know down below what you have made of Tom Lawrence so far, because the goals he's been scoring for you, of lately especially, have just been massive for Ipswich. And at this point in the season as well, it's a bit of a tricky tie, this one, but with with Blackburn being a really awkward team so far this season, a victory here I think would have actually lifted them out of the relegation zone, but it's games like this where Blackburn really do need to be picking up things if they are going to get out of the relegation zone, because week by week it's looking more tricky for them. And then for our next game, guys, we have Michael of Preston North End, who came up against Brighton, and what a victory this was for Michael of Preston. In the end, it managed to finish by 2-0 to Preston, and oh god, just what a victory this was. I've got to say that Brighton in this game definitely weren't at their best. I mean, from, you know, things that I've seen from Brighton so far this season, from watching them in previous matches, I thought a lot of players for Brighton were possibly off the pace. I mean, Knockout, Glenn Murray, their star players like that, which you'd expect quite a lot from, weren't really at it in this game. But I think a lot of credit has to be given to Preston in this one, because we stuck to our game plan in this game, and in the end we just managed to be the better side against Brighton. I mean, of course, Brighton were on a crazy unbeaten run going into this game, so possibly losing that may not be such a bad thing for them, because obviously the longer you go on an unbeaten run for, it could have the opposite effect really, with adding to a little bit of pressure for them. But they've lost that unbeaten run now, so it'll be an interesting one actually next week as to whether Brighton can bounce back from this one, because that will show possibly a test of their mentality really. And the shout out has to be given, of course, to Chris Maxwell, who managed to pop up with a fantastic penalty save in this game. It was a fantastic save from Chris Maxwell, and what a game it was from Preston. Let me know, Preston fans, what you thought of this one down below. And then for our next game, guys, we had Rotherham United, who came up against Norwich, and to my surprise, Rotherham managed to walk away with a 2-1 victory. So, of course, of late, Norwich, of course, it's been quite precedented, really. I mean, the pressure which Alex Neil has been under lately for Norwich, and rightly so, but this result here, just, if Norwich is going to continue sticking with Alex Neil after this result, and just how things have gone so badly wrong for Norwich, I'd be very surprised. I think a lot of Norwich fans will be very surprised as well. I mean, I felt like the result they had the other week against Derby, when they managed to get that 3-0 victory, was sort of papering over the cracks. But I did think going into this game, with the confidence that they've had from that Derby game, they might, you know, go and walk over Rotherham. But that was not the case in this game at all. Of course, Norwich weren't aided by Nelson Oliveira getting sent off in the first half, which that, you know, set them back straight away. But I've got to give fair play to Rotherham in this match. I mean, lately, probably the last like 3 or 4 weeks, they've actually been looking quite decent, and a bit of a frustrated side so far this season, Rotherham. I mean, obviously been bottom of the table for pretty much the whole of the season, but I've got to give some credit to Rotherham in this one. They stuck to that. Of course, they were playing against the 10 men of Norwich for the majority of it, but in the end, they managed to walk away with the 2-1 victory. Norwich fans, how much longer are you willing to put up with Alex Neil? And then for our next game, guys, we had Sheffield Wednesday, who came up against Huddersfield, and in the end, this one managed to finish by 2-0 to Sheffield Wednesday. So an impressive win for Sheffield Wednesday, really, and I do feel like this was needed for them, to be completely honest. I think if they were to lose this match, with the way that Sheffield Wednesday were currently playing, it's a really awkward one, because they were on a little bit of a bad patch in form, but they managed to ride this one with a 2-0 victory against fellow promotion chasers Huddersfield Town. And both goals in this match will be massive for Sheffield Wednesday for the rest of the season. I mean, that strike from Ross Wallace, if you've not seen it, make sure you go check it out. It was a fantastic hit from Ross Wallace into the top corner, and Forestieri as well managing to get back on the score sheet. To have him on top form going into this end of the season is going to be pivotal if Sheffield Wednesday are going to make the playoffs. But in terms of Huddersfield, things just weren't going their way. A couple of decisions didn't go their way. The way they were playing just wasn't clicking for them, and of course they weren't helped by that red card as well. That sort of summed up their afternoon. But Sheffield Wednesday fans, what did you make of Sam Winnall? I believe that you got to saw him play 45 minutes, so let me know down below. And then for our last game, guys, we had Wolves, who came up against Aston Villa, and in the end, Wolves managed to claim a 1-0 victory. So I'd love to know some Wolves fans' opinions in the comments down below as to what you thought of this one, and some Aston Villa fans as well, because it was a quite topsy-turvy match, this one actually. But a fantastic win for Wolves, as Paul Lambert has looked pretty decent with this Wolves side of late. But the goal actually came from a Sam Johnson mistake, so I'll be interested to know, Villa fans, what you've made of Sam Johnson so far. I thought he looked quite decent in the game you had against Spurs, but in this game, with him leading that to a mistake, I mean, young goalkeepers are always bound to make mistakes like that, but a bit of a frustrating one really when things like that could be avoided. But of course, Villa going forward as well, I don't think they had a shot on target in this match, so very poor from them. And I do get that impression that without Jonathan Kodjia, Aston Villa just don't have too much to offer going forward. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that when they've got players like Ross McCormack in the squad, but just a poor one from Villa all around. Fair play to Wolves. So guys, in terms of my goal of the weekend, I'm going to give it to Ross Wallace for his belter he scored against Huddersfield Town. And then for my result of the weekend, of course, who else could I give it to but Michael of Preston North End for that fantastic 2-0 victory over Brighton. Brighton. So let me know what your goal and result of the weekend was in the comments down below. I'd be very interested to know. But apart from that, guys, I will now wrap it up for this video. So make sure you leave a like if you have enjoyed. It is always massively appreciated. As well as that, make sure you check out all the other links in the description down below. Make sure you follow me on Twitter as well, as I always tweet before I upload a video. Therefore, you'll never miss a video ever again, guys. And I must say as well, just thank you so much for all your support lately. It has been honestly insane, and I'll try and get some more videos out in the upcoming week, guys. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.